Hi everybody, it's Russell Markham here from VectorVest. So great to see so many of you along today, so thank you for your interest. Travel and tourism stocks to be aware of, and let the international borders flow once again. Interesting to see the developments that have been taking place. A lot of our tourism stocks have been heavily sold down in recent years, understandably. Things have been tough. Is this a turnaround about to take place? The international borders are now sort of opening around the world. Australia's restrictions have pretty much all been lifted. Things are starting to turn around. We investigate a bit further using VectorVest. My name is Russell Markham. I'm the Director of Education for VectorVest Australia. Now, before we get going, I just need to read out a disclaimer here. So please note our license number there, and you can find out more about us per our financial services guide on our website as well. In addition here, please note any advice is general today, so if you do need personal advice, please do speak to your financial professional. I'm not licensed to give personal, I can only give general advice. Past performance does not guarantee future results. Forecasts and backtests used or discussed in this presentation are intended as a guide only, and actual results may be affected by known unknown risks and uncertainties, and therefore may differ materially from the results ultimately achieved. Okay, with that said, let's jump into the overall tourism industry here. All right, so the overall tourism industry here, here's a quick snapshot. Very interesting to see here. Look at that, the total amount there, $32.4 billion. All right, so it's a big industry. In 2021, tourism directly contributed about 1.6% of Australia's total GDP. All right, so you can see there, it's certainly an important aspect of Australia's GDP. In terms of total exports, 6.6% it accounted for. So we certainly would not want to get rid of that industry. It was devastating when, COVID took place, and it impacted upon Australia quite heavily. And the reason being is you can see the statistics here, and this is per tra.gov.au. They do some great research there. 1 in 26 jobs involves tourism. All right, so it employs 500,000 people, a lot of people, and it accounts for 1 in 7 businesses. So in June 21, 334,500 tourism-related businesses in Australia. So very interesting in terms of the overall snapshot there. All right, moving on over here, if I have a look at tourism international arrivals, so let's look at people coming into Australia here. And you can see, when COVID took place, it really sort of hit the industry hard. You can see just how those numbers dropped away over there in 2020, dropped all the way down to 1.8. I'll open up another website. We'll give you some figures for 2021 as well. And if I look at a more recent snapshot, abs.gov.au does a great snapshot each month in terms of people coming in and leaving. I'm not so concerned about to get caught up in the actual numbers itself. It's the trend that I'm wanting to show you here. Look at the trend. It's really starting to pick up. November, December, January, February, March. You're starting to see a big pickup in numbers coming in. This is the net effect, also provided by abs.gov.au. They do a great job there at showing you the net effect, so the arrivals and then also accounting for the departures. And you can see over here, look, it's really starting to turn around now. The net effect was quite devastating. A lot of people return home. A lot of our international students return home. It was a very difficult time for the Australian economy, and you're starting to see that rebound in terms of the total arrivals versus departures. So we're starting to pick up again. And this is going to start to flow through into tourism. As numbers start picking up, as people come into Australia. Even if someone were to come in permanently to live in Australia, not necessarily come for tourism opportunities, of course they're going to fall into tourism at some point because they will account for domestic tourism. So tourism is not just international, of course. Tourism can also be domestic. So where did you go on holiday this year? Chances are, if you've been on holiday this year, it might have been locally. and definitely the year before, chances are it was a local holiday rather than running the risk of an international travel and being caught offshore somewhere because of COVID restrictions. So tourism impacts both domestic as well as, of course, international tourism coming in. So let's have a look here. I've got a website open here, which was interesting, and let's bring this one across over here. So if you're looking for those sources there, abs.gov.au, and in here, this is where it shows some of the latest total arrivals, and there was a snapshot I took place there, so just keep your eye on that as the numbers start picking up. It's definitely going to start flowing through into Australia, and you can start to see plenty of good statistics here. Total overseas departures, despite numbers picking up, there's also a lot departing, a lot of family members, whatever have you, desperate to get offshore to see relatives that they haven't seen for a long time. So that's all wraps up into those figures. There's that graph you just saw, total overseas arrivals and departures, Feb 2012 to March 2022, nice and recent. So despite a large amount of departures, there's also a large amount of people coming back to Australia, and we're starting to see that turnaround now. If you're in the tourism related industry, this is what you want to see. This is not what you wanted to see. It's going to impact your business, not just tourism, but also a lot of other service providers in Australia who may not necessarily be related to tourism. Okay, so if you get the chance, you can have a look there. Plenty of great statistics here as well. But you can see just how devastating COVID was on the economy in terms of numbers. If I come back to over here, actually, no, that's one I've already shown you, so that's fine. We can minimize that. Good. I just wanted to show you where I was getting those statistics from. All right. So here it is, another snapshot in terms of expenditure. So you can see a lot of expenditure that took place, and then when COVID hit it really fell off a cliff. It dropped down to, I think it was about $8 billion, and prior to that, 2019 had been over $40 billion US in international tourism expenditure. So you can see why those tourism industry operators were so hard hit. The restaurants, right through to, jet boating and skydiving, whatever have you, all those amazing opportunities that you get in Australia with our wonderful tourism industry, it really did impact all the hotel bookings, whatever have you. So are things about to turn around? And if I said to you, based on what you're seeing, if I gave you a snapshot of our tourism related businesses, what do you think that the share prices would have done during that time period? Yep, you got it, right? They've taken a hit. But as the numbers are starting to come back, as we're starting to see the numbers, what do you think that's going to start doing to those tourism related stocks? Yep, you got it. We're starting to see those turnarounds, and I'll show you that shortly. All right, so with that said, let's move on a bit more. So here's domestic tourism. So remember those international arrivals, even if an international arrival, an immigrant came in saying, no, I'm not here for tourism, I'm here to work, invariably they're going to probably fall into domestic tourism regardless, because we all need a holiday at some point to recharge batteries. And if you travel domestically, well, then you fall into domestic tourism. So, arrivals are good for tourism, whether or not one intends to be a tourist or not. So, overnight spends, you can see here, I want to show you just how devastating COVID was. You can see here it was down 25%, from previous sort of peaks. So you can just see the annual snapshot here. Overnight spends were down, overnight trips were down. This is domestic tourism. So as we all sort of went into lockdown, nights on trips down 23%. Quarterly snapshot, overnight spends down 32, down 28 for overnight trips. This is quarterly snapshot, nights on trips down 28%. All right, so you can just see the impact that it had. This is all changing now, of course, as restrictions are being lifted. As I'm presenting here, I'm located currently in Queensland, and we've had restrictions lifted for quite some time, and we're starting to see, a real boom starting to take place in our tourism industry again, starting to pick up. All right, so let's now jump into the all-powerful VectorVest tools, and this is where VectorVest can really assist you significantly. So what we've done here is we've picked out all the key travel and tourism stocks in Australia. I'm going to show you where you can go and find that. If you're new to VectorVest, you can always take out a trial for 30 days for $9.95 USD, call it 13 Australian dollars. You can trial out for 30 days. You can barely get a cup of coffee and a muffin for that these days. And you can then come in and have a look at the great amount of intellectual research that's done each month and see what you think and test out the ideas that we put forward. This was one of the ideas that we put forward in VectorVest a couple of months back. So to show you where this comes from, if I go to views here, so each week we write a weekly essay to our subscribers along with all the analysis that we cover. And on the 25th of February, we wrote this essay here entitled, "Are Travel Stocks Finally About to Take Off?" Pardon the pun. And we started to delve into our research, and the reason being, and then we created a video for our subscribers to have a look at. And as part of that video that we created, we set up what we call in VectorVest a watch list. So we created a list of all the key travel and tourism stocks. So you can see over here, 25 in total. All right, so we went away, we did our homework, we researched, we found the biggest ones out there, and we put them into a watch list for our subscribers to take a closer look at. So with that said, here are the 25 odd stocks. If I come down to the bottom here, and I'm going to show you what the average of all those stocks look like. All right, so here it is. Don't worry about that for now. And I'll pull that back over a couple of years, 5 odd years worth. So you can see tourism was going really well for a while, and then you know, sort of the fears around COVID and whatever have you were kicking in, and tourism took an almighty hit. But you can see it's been fighting really well on the rebound. So since about July, August, a lot of those tourism stocks have started to rebound. Okay, so what are those stocks driving that rebound? If I go back a bit more in time, you can see just how it's performed over the years, those key tourism type stocks. So, you know, COVID was cruel because, you know, there was a really good run there in tourism stocks, with tourism stocks. And then what took place there, you can see invariably that big pullback. All right, but look, the exciting part is that I'm here today to say, look, there's a rebound currently taking place, as you can see with some of the key stocks that we track. All right, so with that said, let's close out of that. And let's go and take a little bit of a closer look at some of our best performers. Now, what we do each and every day in VectorVest is we will rank and sort a given list of stocks, whether it be in a watch list in this particular instance, or all the stocks that we track, over 2,000 shares, including ETFs and LICs, listed investment companies, and retail investment trusts, REITs as well, we track. What we'll do is we'll rank and sort all of those every day, with the best ones at the top of the list and the worst ones down at the bottom of the list. So in technical speak, we refer to that as fundamentals and technicals. The stocks, ETFs, the LICs, the REITs, with the best combinations of fundamentals and technicals at the top of the list. Fundamentals meaning the building blocks, so companies with, you know, good cash flows, good balance sheets, you know, good financial data behind them. And then the technicals, it's just a fancy way of saying share prices that are moving up nicely on average, all right, for a better term. So the combination of the best financials and technicals, or fundamentals and technicals, at the top of the list. And we can see right now, as of 22 April, corporate travel, Alliance Aviation Services, Reef Casino, etc., etc. You can see them coming down the list here. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to grab a handful. So just grab the first couple here. So the best fundamentals and technicals at the top of the list. And you can start to see the profiles. Now, before I go into this a bit further, let's just take one step back. All right, so I'll go back to the 25 list that we've got. I'm going to show you the total graph again. And I'm going to show you something very interesting taking place. All right, so pull back just a couple of years, and let's do this. I'm going to put on this indicator called EPS. I'll make it an area graph, and I'll make it stand out a little bit better for us all to see. Okay. Something very interesting is taking place. This EPS is a 12-month leading forecast on earnings. It's proprietary to VectorVest. It's an incredibly powerful indicator. It's looking at past, current, and then forecasts future earnings. When earnings are rising, on average, share prices will rise. In this particular case, it is a portfolio. So you're just starting to see, look at that, you're just starting to see those negative earnings now turning into positive, and you're just starting to see that movement toward the upside. So this bodes well for the industry. Where an industry has a rising set of earnings, that bodes well. Now, this is a snapshot of all 25. So it's going to include the good ones and the bad ones, right? Our role as investors is to weed out the good from the bad. And there might only be one or two really good stocks in a sector or industry. There might be 10 or 20. You've got the tools at VectorVest to weed out the top performers. So what I'm going to do here per this watch list is I'm going to say thanks VectorVest for ranking, sorting them all every day for me. I know tourism is starting to turn around, so you tell me and help me, guide me, what are some of the best tourism stocks out there? Well, let's do this. We'll grab the first couple here, graph them. Now what we'll do is we'll put on the earnings as well. Okay, so we want to get the best earning profiles along with the best upward movers. Look at this, corporate travel, huge turnaround in the earnings here, massive, right? Something's going on here. The earnings are turning around sufficiently to warrant further investigation. Look at this, the price there was at $19.50 odd cents, and look at it, it's gone up to $25. All right, about 25% price increase as those earnings turned around. So VectorVest is really giving you good guidance. If I put on the buy, hold, sell ratings that we track every day, you can see here the turnaround occurred. The stock was given a buy rating more days than not. So a buy rating means that a good amount of change, good change in fundamentals and technicals is taking place. So VectorVest guides you. All right, so there was corporate travel. I'll show you this one here. AQZ, Alliance Aviation Services, as you can imagine, as air travel starts to pick up again. Interesting enough, their earnings were actually holding pretty steady regardless of what was taking place with COVID. So a few of you in this industry will probably know better than I can sort of imagine, but it looks to me like they were probably still operating irrespective of whether COVID was slowing things down. So it looks like they were certainly associated with services that may not necessarily have been heavily impacted by COVID. I'm certainly not seeing it from an earnings perspective. So this stock here is pretty robust, considering you wouldn't really have known that there was a pandemic going on. Sure, there was a bit of a telltale sign here, but it was very short-lived, and up it went again. Okay, next one here, RCT, Reef Casino. Look at the ferocious turnaround on those earnings. It's a huge uplift in the earnings. The upside there, it's gone from $2.82 to over $3 now. What I don't like about it currently, though, is the earnings are starting to taper off again. So that certainly wouldn't be one that I would put on my short list just yet. All right. And you can keep going through here. So Aqueous Entertainment here, a big uplift earnings, just a little bit of a slide off again. So again, it's sort of question that. Flight Center, although the earnings haven't quite sort of broken to the upside as I'd like to see, look how quickly it's moving up from negative coming into positive territory. So there's a big turnaround taking place in Flight Center, and that bodes well for its future share price from what we can see currently. All right. So there you go. You've got it all at a snapshot at your fingers each and every day. So what I did is I made a list of the ones that stood out for me. Now again, please do speak to your financial professional. I can't give you personal advice, but using the VectorVest tools, these are the three that stood out for me: corporate travel, AQZ, and KLS. And if I come down over here and show you the average of those stocks, this is the reason being. If I pull it back a tad over here, you can see just this is the collective outcome of those three stocks. Look at the velocity and ferocity, if you wish, of those earnings. Those earnings are really starting to kick in now. All right, it's sort of bouncing around a bit, but the more this continues to track up, here it is over the last 3 months, the more this continues to track up, the more so you'll see the overall weighting of those three stocks move up on average. That's what we anticipate. That's what theory has shown us over the years. And there it is, as the earnings came off, price went down. It's interesting that these three stocks, despite the collective outcome of the earnings falling, they were starting to turn around a little bit earlier. So it tells me a lot of investors were saying, yeah, we know there's some bad news coming out at the moment on the earnings, but we really expect these stocks to turn around when things turn around. So that's always a good telltale sign. So there it is. There's that turnaround in earnings. These are the ones that jumped out for me on the total snapshot there. So if you get a chance, hop into VectorVest, take a trial, run it through yourself. What are the ones that jump out to you? Last thing I'm going to leave you with today, coming back to our travel and tourism stocks, and what you can do in VectorVest is you can benchmark these stocks. I find this an incredibly useful exercise. So what I'm going to do here, so I'm going to click on graph selected, so I'll load up, say, corporate travel, and now I'm going to change it from being a stock to being a performance graph. So what performance does is it allows me to benchmark. I can say, here's corporate travel benchmarked against the consumer discretionary industry. As you can see, it's outperformed quite a bit in recent months. If I turn this off and say, well, instead of looking at an overall industry, why don't we benchmark it against the different stocks? So here are some of the ones we had, right? AQZ. I put in .ax to tell me it's for Australia. RCT. You can do the same analysis for America, Europe, Canada, for example. Right, there's so much you can do with VectorVest. So AQS, Flight Center. So we'll just benchmark a few. I won't do all of them. And I've got a slide set where I've done a lot of this for you that I'll share with you just to speed it up. But I just want to show you some of the functionality. So let's say that's what I do there. I want to benchmark it against these couple of stocks here, all in the travel and tourism industry. And what I can do here is I can now put it all in and see who's done what. All right, so I can see, it's this one here, HLO, has been over the last year, assuming all is equal. So you start off, what are the relative performances against each other? So you can see HLO has gone up, 30 odd percent, nearly 40 odd percent, followed by RCT. All right, et cetera, et cetera. And then you can come in and look at different time periods. So you can see which one. Let's make sure we get the right one here. All right, so anyway, it's RCT. Yep, that's the one. That's the one up the top of the list. So the last 6 months, RCT has been your clear performer. Over the last 5 years, now this takes a few seconds here. VectorVest will go back over 5 years. It's going to crunch the numbers, and it's going to come back and tell you who's been the best performers over the 5 years. So we'll just give it a few seconds there. Wow, you can look at this one, AQS. Look at that, spiked up massively and then sort of crashed. I don't like the fact that it crashed like that, but and it looks again. Yep, there it is. AQZ is popping up to the top of that list. So that's over a 5-year period. So AQZ, so if you're looking for a longer term performer, in terms of one that stands out, it looks like AQZ stands out pretty nicely there. All right, so if I change the style, let's make this stand out a bit. We'll highlight it. And let's see, if I make it over, say, 3 months, who's going to be the standout performer now over 3 months? All right, so we'll just fire this up. So interesting, AQZ is not. It's fallen behind. Flight Center over the last 3 months is your standout. So this is useful analysis to do because it's the opportunity cost of your money if you're looking to go into the travel and tourism industry. So, we want to look at what's performing right now. Great, it's good to see historically. It gives me some peace of mind that, yes, AQZ has been a pretty standout performer, but right now, Flight Center is the leader of the pack. And I guess it makes sense. Flight Center does all those bookings for travel and accommodation. That's starting to pick up. Why is it starting to pick up? Because we saw the inflows of people returning back to Australia, net migration picking up, all those key things. There's the flow-on effect. So it doesn't surprise me the slightest to see a Flight Center right up there, along with corporate travel, another service provider to book those flights and accommodation in the corporate scene. So a lot of corporations now are saying to their workers, look, if you'd like to travel again, we're prepared to do it. I suppose in some circumstances you might not have much of a choice. Your boss taps you on the shoulder and says, look, we really need you back in the office next week, at least 1 day a week. Hence, corporate travel services are starting to pick up again as the effects of COVID start waning away. Fingers crossed, time will tell. But certainly while COVID is sort of slowly, hopefully, fading away, I expect this most likely will continue to track the uptrend as we're seeing. All right, can't help myself. Let's do this. This will take a few seconds to calculate. Let's go back 10 years. In the chat box, anyone want to take as a guess as to who the top performer over 10 years has been? Now, it does take a few seconds, and for good reason. VectorVest needs to crunch the numbers, and there we go. So, if you said corporate travel, you're spot on. All right, corporate travel has been your 10-year clear winner, and it was one of our best performers over the short term. So, you know, cutting, slicing, and dicing, you know, corporate travel, and they put on AQ. It's not quite so much of a 10-year period. It's sort of, I don't like the fact it's fallen away quite sharply in recent times. What's this blue one here? Is that AIA? This one here, you know, okay, it hasn't been quite as volatile, but I'd have to say that it's been a pretty good performer too over the years as well. So, you know, pretty solid, not as much volatility. And who are the other ones here? Is that's KLS? KLS certainly has been a good performer, but it certainly has a lot more volatility. It's beta, as you called in corporate finance. You know, it's correlation between the share market up and down movements. It might be have a higher beta. It might be more susceptible to moves in the market. So they're the three. So the final bit of analysis using VectorVest. Please do speak to your financial professional. I can't tell you what's right for you, but corporate travel jumps out. Flight Center, AQS certainly jumps out, but wouldn't make my short list. Flight Center, it has in the short term, so certainly in the short term, that's why I'm going to keep it on there. It's jumped out at me. AIA's also jumped out at me, and I think it's fair to say that, well, let's do this. Let's take off the ones that haven't jumped out, and this is just my opinion, all right? The ones that haven't jumped out quite at me, so HLO, Webjet, look, it was a strong performer over the years, but in the short term, it's definitely recovering. But if you're trying to look for the long-term performers, these most likely would be the ones that sort of are starting to jump out at me. It would be these three here. So corporate travel, AIA, and KLS. All right, coming back into, in fact, instead of doing a 6-month view, I'm going to wrap it up and just do a 3-month view and then leave it at that. So let's just do it over the last 3 months. Those three there, all moving up very nicely. But let's put all the other ones on so we get to see the final result there. So those were the three highlighted ones there over the longer term. But Flight Center would definitely have to be on our radar right now from a short-term perspective. All right. So it's interesting, both Flight Center and corporate travel, which made our list on over the longer term. All right, right up at the top at the list currently there. All right, so there you go. You be the judge which ones jump out at you. But yeah, it doesn't matter how cut, slice, and dice. It's short term. Corporate travel and Flight Center certainly jump out. All right, so I hope you had a lot of fun with that exercise. I certainly enjoyed putting it together. So you can do all this benchmarking in VectorVest, which is incredibly powerful. And you don't just need to benchmark it against, you know, travel stocks. You might say, well, okay, based on all that, I'm going to throw in a mining stock. We all know BHP. Well, how does BHP stack up? All right, there it is. You know, you can change the style and you can make it jump out. Well, there's BHP relative to those travel stocks, and you can see that Flight Center and corporate travel are doing a lot better. BHP is going south, while these guys are going up. All right, so you've got the ability to do all that in VectorVest. All right, so just included those there, just the different ways that did it. There's corporate travel, as you saw today. All right, short-term performance, Flight Center, corporate travel, and also I wanted to give Qantas a mention. It's coming up with a vengeance at the moment. All right, so you might want to keep your eye on that as well. All right, so those are the standout ones I sort of pointed out to you today. That's a longer snapshot view of those three that I pointed out as well for you to take a look at. Just jumping back into VectorVest and wrapping it up here, but I wanted to show you this as well. So this is all the corporate travel stocks. And if I put on sales, look at this, you can see that there's been an uptick in the sales, right? So something's taking place, right? Prior to that, sales were on their nose, as you'd expect, all right? But it's just that turnaround's just starting to take place here. And your net profit margin, so for every $1 of sales, what are these tourism companies making? They're making about 3.75 cents in the dollar currently for net profit margin. Not all of them, some are higher, some are lower. But what's interesting is the trend that's starting to pick up. So sales are starting to pick up. Your net profit margins are starting to pick up as well. And if I go to the standout ones, the three that jumped out at me using the VectorVest analysis. So these are net profit margin, look at that, nearly 9%. And look at the huge uplift in sales taking place across those three companies at the moment as well. All right, let's jump back in the slide sets here. And yeah, so you can see I've just shown you some standouts here. Here's corporate travel. Look at the earnings turning around. Look at the net profit margin really starting to motor up. 20 cents in the dollar for corporate travel. So it's certainly picking up its margin. And in here, the sales are starting to tick up as well. Very positive to see. AQZ, I really like this. I like the fact that your sales and net profit margin were picking up. Look at the sales really ramping up. Net profit margin holding steady and increasing, and those earnings driving it up with the share price picking up. C-Link Travel, nice set of rising earnings. The sales are very good. Net profit margin, a question mark on this because it's sort of falling off, but it's being more than offset by a big uplift in sales. So as soon as the net profit margin starts to pick up, I anticipate those earnings to ramp up even further, which in turn should drive that share price. All right, last thing there, if you would like to take it a trial, if you like what you saw today, take it a trial. You can hop along to www.vectorvest.com.au. So I'll just bring up my web page here. I'll just fire it up, vectorvest.com.au. And on there's a link where you can take it a trial, and we can get you some training. So there's some free training for every trialist. We also have group coaching, so we can come along and get trained up. And then at the end, should you choose, you can choose some one-on-one training if that's what you'd like. So vectorvest.com.au, risk-free trial. You click on that, and you can then take it a trial to VectorVest. Right? So it's all there. www.vectorvest.com.au, risk-free trial. That's where you can take it out. All right, I'll leave it there. Let's leave it back on the benchmark because it's always interesting to see that benchmark. Let's pull it back a bit. There we are. All right, I'll leave it there so you can have a look. Thanks again for having me along. Thanks for attending. Hope you got a lot out of it. Don't forget our next upcoming webcast. Let's just quickly go to YouTube. Don't forget the next one, same time, same place next week. So if I just go to Google and type in VectorVest, not Google, YouTube, VectorVest Australia. If you like us, follow us, check us out on YouTube. You're on YouTube now, of course. Follow us, and you won't miss out on the notifications, but you can see upcoming live streams. So we're scheduled for 3 May, and we're going to run this one here. Build a brilliant watch list with VectorVest. That's a lot of fun, because we're not just going to be confined to travel and tourism stocks. We're going to open it up, and you're going to be surprised and really fascinated and blown away by the analysis that we can do. It's so easy to do. You don't need to be a financial analyst or a technician of any sort. I'll show you just how quick and easy it is to do using VectorVest, where we'll go and identify some of the best stocks from around the world and build a watch list so we can track those top performing stocks. And then don't forget, after that, we'll have an ETFs presentation, finding best ETFs from around the world. We'll then return back to Australia and look at the Australian gold stocks. All that glitters is not gold. There's a lot of good gold stocks, but then there's also a lot of not so good gold stocks. How do we separate them out? And then this one here, very popular, of course, in Australia, the big 4 banks. We'll analyze them using VectorVest. And some very interesting analysis. Rising inflation, interest rates is not necessarily a bad thing for the banks, but you'll have to wait for me to let you know why that is the case. So make a note on that in your diary now on 31 May. It's a really good talk coming up. All right, so with that said, let's minimize back out here. I'll leave you there. Thanks again. Have a great rest of the morning or afternoon, wherever you are in the world, or evening. Thanks again. Until next time, bye for now.